Part 2. The Family's Money. Kung read the message over her shoulder. Every trace of warmth left his expression. Officer Carter reached for an evidence bag. "Don't delete anything." Lynn handed him the phone. "They saw us together." "Yes," Kung said. "And now they know you're helping me." "Yes." She looked up at him. "You can still step away." "No." The answer came before she finished speaking. "Kung, no." His voice remained quiet, but no one in the room mistook it for uncertainty. "Whoever sent that message believes threatening you will make me withdraw." His eyes returned to the photograph. "They have misunderstood us both." For the first time since meeting him, Lynn saw something dangerous beneath Kung's composure. Not recklessness, not anger, resolve. The person watching her had wanted to frighten away the man standing beside her. Instead, they had given him a reason to stay. The following morning, Will paused before getting out of the SUV. His middle school stood less than 50 yards away. Students streamed through the entrance in loose groups, laughing, shoving one another, and calling across the crowded sidewalk. Normal children beginning a normal day. Will looked toward the dark sedan parked near the crossing guard. "Is that one of Mr. Min Young's people?" Lynn followed his gaze. "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because Daniel sent me the vehicle description and the driver's photograph." Will nodded, apparently satisfied. David leaned between the seats. "Do we have bodyguards now?" "No." "That looks like a bodyguard." "It's temporary security." "So, bodyguards with a nicer name." Lynn turned toward him. "Sit back." Michaela adjusted Mr. Buttons in her lap. "Does he get security?" "The rabbit?" "Yes." "Mr. Buttons will be wherever you are." Michaela considered the answer. "Then he has me." David grinned. "Mr. Buttons has a bodyguard." The children laughed. For one brief moment, the heaviness inside the SUV lifted. Will reached for the door. "Love you," Lynn said. He looked back. "Love you more." "You know that's my line. I'm borrowing it." She watched until he disappeared through the school entrance. Daniel's security officer remained across the street. Lynn should have felt reassured. Instead, she wondered whether the person watching her children had already noticed him. The manila envelope arrived at the shelter shortly after noon. No courier, no visitor. The receptionist found it inside the mail slot with Lynn's name printed across the front. Lynn carried it into her office without opening it and called Officer Carter. Then she called Kung. He answered immediately. "What happened?" "An envelope was delivered to my office." "Have you opened it?" "No." "I'm on my way." She looked through the glass wall toward the reception area. "You don't know what's inside?" "No." "You could be in the middle of something important." "I am." The call ended. Kung arrived with Daniel 11 minutes later. Officer Carter entered less than a minute behind them. Carter photographed the unopened envelope before putting on gloves. "No return address," he said. "Is there a postmark?" Lynn asked. "No, it was hand-delivered." He opened it carefully. 3 photographs slid onto the conference room table. The first showed Will outside his middle school. He stood near the entrance with his backpack hanging from one shoulder, looking down at his phone. The second showed David and Michaela approaching their elementary school. David held his sister's hand while she jumped over a crack in the sidewalk. The third had been taken at a playground. Michaela sat on a swing. David stood behind her, pushing. Lynn's fingers pressed against the edge of the table. "The playground picture was taken last week." Officer Carter studied her. "You're sure?" "She wore that sweater Thursday." Daniel examined the other photographs without touching them. "These weren't taken on the same day." Carter looked up. "How can you tell?" "The light. Will's photograph was taken in the morning. The elementary school picture is afternoon." Lynn stared at him. "I dropped David and Michaela off in the morning." "So someone was there when they were collected," Kung said. "Tasha picked them up that day." "Then the photographer knew your childcare arrangements." The room became silent. Lynn looked at the images again. Her children were smiling in 2 of them. They had no idea someone was watching. Nothing was written on the front or back. No threat, no demand. None was necessary. Officer Carter slipped the pictures into evidence sleeves. "I'm contacting both schools." "The children can't see these," Lynn said. "They won't hear about them from me. I need to tell the principals enough to protect them without frightening them. I'll handle it carefully." Kung waited until Carter stepped outside to make the calls. Then he moved the empty envelope away from Lynn. "My recommendation has changed." She already knew what he was going to say. "I'm listening." "My estate has a detached guest house designed for executives and families requiring temporary protection. It has controlled access, monitored grounds, and enough space for all 4 of you." Lynn looked at him. "You want us to move into your home?" "Not my home. The guest house is separate." "That distinction doesn't make the offer small." "I'm not pretending it is." Daniel stepped toward the door. "I'll give you privacy." When he was gone, Lynn folded her arms loosely. "Kung, I appreciate what you're offering. But my children moved across the country 3 months ago. They have new schools, new friends, and a house they're still trying to call home. Then we stayed with Tasha. Now you're asking them to pack again. They would remain in their schools. That doesn't make another move invisible to them. No. They already feel as if their lives can be taken apart without warning." Kung held her gaze. "I understand." She had expected an argument. His quiet agreement disarmed her. "I'm not refusing because I'm ungrateful. I know. I am grateful, more than I know how to say. You don't owe me gratitude. Please don't decide what I owe." Something changed in his expression. Not offense, recognition. "You're right," he said. Lynn took a breath. "I need to consider what this will do to them." "Of course." "You won't push?" "No." "That easily?" "The choice is yours." He looked toward the evidence sleeves on the table. "But I hope you'll make it before whoever took those photographs makes another one." That evening, Lynn prepared spaghetti while David checked the back door for the 3rd time. She watched him pull the handle. Locked. He walked away. 2 minutes later, he returned and checked it again. "David." He froze. "You already checked that door." "I forgot." "No, you didn't." His eyes dropped. Lynn turned off the stove and crouched in front of him. "Talk to me. What if somebody comes through the window again?" "They didn't come through the window. We don't know how they entered." "That isn't better." No, it wasn't. She placed both hands on his shoulders. "Officer Carter changed the locks. Mr. Min-young added cameras. There's a security officer outside." "All night?" "Yes." David glanced toward the window. "What if he falls asleep?" "He won't." "How do you know?" "Because Daniel hired him, and I don't think Daniel hires people who sleep on duty." That earned the faintest smile. From the living room, Michaela screamed. Lynn and David ran toward her. Michaela stood on the sofa, clutching Mr. Buttons. "What happened?" "Somebody hit the window." Will was already at the curtains. "Don't open those," Lynn said. He stopped. Another dull thump sounded against the glass. Michaela climbed into Lynn's arms. Will looked through the narrow edge of the curtain. "It's a tree branch." Wind moved the branch again. It struck the window. Thump. Michaela buried her face against Lynn's neck. "It sounded like somebody trying to come in." "I know." Lynn carried her toward the sofa. Will remained near the window, staring into the dark yard. "Mom?" "Yes?" "If they know where we go to school, do they know which rooms are ours?" David went still. Michaela lifted her head. Lynn wished she could take the question out of the room before the younger children understood it. Will looked at her. "Do they?" "I don't know." He nodded, but his face tightened. That was the moment Lynn understood. She had believed keeping them home would preserve stability. Instead, David was checking locks he knew were locked. Michaela heard intruders in tree branches. Will was trying to determine whether a stranger knew where his brother and sister slept. The townhouse no longer represented normalcy. It had become the place where someone entered their lives. Lynn sat with the children until they finished dinner. No one ate much. At bedtime, all 3 followed her into her room without discussion. Will took the chair beside the window. David lay across the foot of the bed. Michaela curled beneath Lynn's arm. Lynn waited until their breathing deepened before reaching for her phone. Kung answered on the first ring. "Lynn?" His voice was alert, as though he had not been asleep. "If the guest house is still available, we'll come." A brief silence followed. "It is. I don't know how long we'll stay." "You don't have to. The children need to remain in their schools. They will. And I'm going back to work." "I expected you would." Lynn looked at her children crowded into the bed. "We can come tomorrow. I'll have everything ready." She closed her eyes. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Neither ended the call immediately. Finally, Kung spoke. "You made the right decision." Lynn opened her eyes. "I made the decision my children need." "Yes." There was no triumph in his voice, only understanding. "Good night, Kung." "Good night, Lynn." She placed the phone on the nightstand and drew Michaela closer. Tomorrow, they would pack again. Not because Lynn was surrendering her independence, because accepting protection was not the same as surrendering control. Across the room, Will shifted in the chair but did not wake. For the first time, Lynn allowed herself to imagine him sleeping somewhere without guarding a window. That possibility was enough. The gates opened before Lynn reached the intercom. Her rental SUV rolled onto a long, tree-lined drive, shaded by towering oaks. Beyond them, manicured lawns stretched toward several stone buildings arranged around a quiet lake. The estate was beautiful. It was also built to keep people out. Cameras followed the drive at measured intervals. Security vehicles waited near a low building to the right of the main gate. 2 guards watched from behind tinted glass. Will leaned toward the window. "That's camera number 6. Lynn glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You're counting?" "I started at the gate." David looked up from his game. "Why?" "To see how many there are." "Why?" "To see if there are enough." David shrugged. "I'm counting houses." "There are 3, Michaela announced. "The building by the gate isn't a house," Will said. "It has a roof." "That doesn't make it a house." "It does to birds." Lynn smiled, despite the nervousness gathering inside her. Her children were arguing again, not whispering, not checking the locks, arguing. She followed the drive toward a 2-story guest house overlooking the lake. Kung stood near the front steps with Daniel. Neither man wore a suit. Daniel had changed into dark trousers and a charcoal shirt. Kung wore black slacks and a pale blue button-down with the sleeves folded neatly to his forearms. He looked less like the chief executive of a pharmaceutical company, still entirely like a man accustomed to being obeyed. Lynn parked. Before she could open her door, all 3 children climbed out. "Mama, there's a lake," David called. "I see it." "Can we fish?" "We have been here 9 seconds." "So maybe?" "So wait." Kung approached, but stopped several feet away, allowing the children to study him before he entered their space. Lynn joined them. "Will, David, Michaela, this is Mr. Min Young." Michaela looked up at him. "You're very tall." Kung inclined his head. "I've been told." "Mommy said you have a safe house." "The guest house is safe." "Does it have monsters?" "Michaela," Lynn said. Kung considered the question seriously. "None that Daniel has found." Michaela looked at Daniel. "Did you check?" "Twice." "Under the beds?" "And inside the closets." She nodded approvingly. "Okay." David pointed toward the lake. "Are there fish?" "Yes." "Big ones?" "Some." "Can we catch them?" "If your mother agrees." David looked at Lynn. "I like him." "You like anyone who gives you the answer you want." "I also like Tasha." "Exactly." Will had not joined the conversation. His attention remained on the camera mounted beneath the guest house roofline. Kung noticed. "There are 23 cameras covering this section of the property." Will looked at him. "Any blind spots?" "A few." "You know where they are?" "Yes." "Who else knows?" "Daniel, Naomi, 4 members of the primary security team." "What if one of them tells somebody?" Daniel answered. "Everyone assigned to the property undergoes continuous background screening. Access is divided so no single person controls the entire system." Will looked from Daniel to Kung. "What happens if the power goes out?" 2 backup generators engage within 6 seconds, Kung said. The cameras also have independent battery power. And if the internet goes down? The system operates on a closed internal network. Will nodded slowly. For the first time since the break-in, some of the tension left his shoulders. So we're safe here. Yes, Kung said. You are. Lynn watched her son accept the promise. She hoped Kung understood how much it meant. The guest house felt warm rather than temporary. Sunlight filled the family room through wide windows overlooking the water. The kitchen was fully stocked. 4 bedrooms opened from the upstairs hallway, each with fresh linens and space for the children's belongings. Michaela found the butterfly room first. Purple and blue butterflies covered one wall above a white bed. "Mama!" Lynn hurried upstairs, expecting trouble. Michaela stood in the center of the room with both hands pressed against her cheeks. "They know me." Lynn looked at Kung. He remained in the hallway. The room was already decorated. "You didn't do this?" she asked. "No." Michaela placed Mr. Buttons on the bed. "He likes butterflies." "Then he has excellent taste," Kung said. David chose the room facing the lake because he could see the dock. Will selected the room nearest the stairs. Lynn noticed, but did not comment. Daniel brought in 2 suitcases before Will intercepted him. "I can carry those." "I know. They're ours." Daniel handed him the lighter suitcase. "Then we'll divide the work." Will accepted the arrangement. Lynn carried a box into the primary bedroom and set it beside the dresser. When she turned, Kung stood near the open door with her heaviest suitcase. "You don't have to carry that." "I'm aware. I can manage it." "I'm aware of that too." She watched him place it beside the bed. "You have an answer for everything." "Not everything." "Most things?" "Only the questions you've asked so far." A small smile touched her lips. He started toward the hallway. "Kung." He turned. "Thank you. I know what bringing us here requires." The guest house was empty. "That isn't what I mean." He waited. "You opened your property to 4 people you barely know. Your security team is changing schedules. Your staff is adjusting. My children are about to disturb whatever peace existed here." From downstairs, David shouted, "Will, stop telling me where to put my stuff." Will shouted back, "Then stop putting it in the hallway." Kung glanced toward the staircase. "The disturbance has begun." Lynn laughed. His left cheek dimple appeared briefly when he smiled back. Then his expression softened. "You and your children are not an inconvenience." The words were simple. She believed him. "That doesn't mean I'll stay forever. I haven't asked you to. And I intend to continue working. I expected nothing less." She folded her arms. "You're being unusually agreeable. You made the decision to come. I have no interest in making you regret it." Something inside her eased. "Then we understand each other." "I believe we do." By late afternoon, boxes had been opened, clothes placed in drawers, and arguments settled over who controlled the television remote. David and Michaela ran across the lawn toward the lake, with Daniel walking several steps behind them. Will followed more slowly, still cataloging cameras. Lynn stood near the guest house window. "They look different," she said. Kung stood beside her, leaving enough space that she did not feel crowded. "They feel safe. It hasn't even been a day." Sometimes the body recognizes safety before the mind trusts it. She looked at him. "That sounds like something a psychologist would say." "I've spent time around several." "Professionally?" "Among other circumstances." He did not elaborate. Naomi appeared on the stone path carrying a tablet. The pace of her steps told Lynn the quiet moment was over. "We found the print shop," Naomi said when she reached them. Kung's attention sharpened. "The school photographs?" "Yes. All 3 were produced from a self-service terminal at a shop 12 miles from Lynn's office." "Cameras?" "Exterior only. The interior system was disabled that afternoon." Lynn stepped closer. "Disabled how?" "Someone triggered a software update remotely. The cameras rebooted during the exact 17-minute window when the photographs were printed. Another system understood. Another blind spot deliberately created." Naomi opened the footage on her tablet. A dark SUV entered the print shop's parking lot. The windows were heavily tinted. The driver wore a baseball cap, keeping his face turned from the camera. 16 minutes later, the vehicle left. "Can you read the plate?" Kung asked. Naomi enlarged the image. The resolution was poor, but we recovered enough characters to identify the vehicle. A registration record filled the screen. Registered owner, Brooks Pharmaceutical Holdings. Kung read the name twice. Daniel joined them from the lawn. "Dennis Brooks," he said. Lynn stared at the screen. Brooks. The name pulled at something in her memory. Then she understood. "Oh, God." Kung turned toward her. "What is it?" "Louise's daughters." "What about them?" "Their last name is Brooks." Naomi lowered the tablet slightly. Lynn looked from her to Kung. "Denise Brooks," she swallowed, "and Deborah Brooks." Across the lawn, her children's laughter carried from the edge of the lake. Only minutes earlier, Lynn had believed they had finally reached safe ground. Now, the first concrete evidence in the investigation pointed toward the family she had crossed the country to be near. Kung's office overlooked the lake from the east wing of the main house. Lynn sat at one end of a long conference table with Kung beside her. Officer Carter joined by video, while Naomi connected her tablet to the wall display. The registration record remained on the screen. Brooks Pharmaceutical Holdings. Daniel stood near the windows with his arms folded. "Dennis Brooks founded the company 32 years ago," Naomi said. "Privately held until 2011. Current operations include pharmaceutical manufacturing, medical distribution, and clinical logistics." Lynn looked toward Kung. "You know him." "I know of him." "That sounds evasive." "We've negotiated opposite each other, attended the same conferences, and competed for several contracts." "Do you trust him?" "No." The answer came easily. Officer Carter leaned toward his camera. "Do you think Brooks ordered the surveillance?" Kung studied the registration again. "I think using a vehicle registered to his own company would be inconsistent with how Dennis operates." "That isn't the same as saying he's innocent," Carter said. "No, it means he isn't careless." Lynn looked from one man to the other. "Someone connected to his company used that vehicle." "Yes," Daniel said. "The question is whether they had authorization." Naomi changed the display to photographs of 3 women gathered outside a charity gala. Lynn recognized Louise immediately. Beside her stood 2 younger women. Denise was tall, polished, and carefully dressed in a dark green gown. Lynn had seen her at several family gatherings. The woman on Louise's other side was unfamiliar. "That's Deborah?" Lynn asked. Naomi nodded. "Photograph taken 18 months ago." Lynn studied her face. Deborah Brooks looked ordinary. That unsettled her more than if the woman had appeared obviously unstable. Officer Carter spoke. "Tell us exactly what relationship you have with them." "Almost none." "Start with Denise." "I've met her about 5 times in 20 years. Family gatherings, mostly. We've never spent time alone. We don't call each other. We don't exchange Christmas cards." "And Deborah?" "I've never met her." Naomi looked up from her tablet. "Never?" "Not once. I knew Louise had another daughter, but my father kept the families separate." "Would you recognize Deborah's voice?" Carter asked. "No." "Then she could have been the caller." "So could Denise, or Louise." Lynn looked at the 3 women on the screen. "I don't know which one threatened my children." Kung's attention shifted toward her. "What exactly did the caller say?" Lynn hesitated. She had reported the final threat. Until now, she had not repeated the entire conversation. "She said I should have stayed in California." Naomi began typing. "What else?" Carter asked. Lynn looked down at her hands. "She said, 'You're not coming here and taking what belongs to us.'" Daniel's posture changed. "Her exact words?" "Yes." "Did she identify what she believed you were taking?" "No. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about." Lynn could still hear the woman's calm breathing on the other end of the call. Then she said, "You know why you came back. You're coming for our family's money." No one spoke. "And after that?" Carter asked. Lynn's voice quieted. "She told me my children were going to die because of me." The photograph of Louise and her daughters remained on the screen, 3 women smiling beneath ballroom lights. One of them might have calmly threatened to murder Lynn's children. Officer Carter broke the silence. "Why didn't you include the reference to money in your original statement?" "Because I didn't understand it. My father lives in an old brick house. He worked his entire life. He's comfortable, but he isn't wealthy." "And inheritance?" Daniel asked. "I've never asked." "Life insurance?" "I don't know." "Business interests?" "He doesn't have any." Naomi had stopped typing. She looked toward Kung. "What?" "I ran a preliminary property search after we connected the vehicle to the Brooks family." Another document replaced the gala photograph. A satellite map showed William Smith's home and the surrounding properties. His 6-acre parcel was highlighted in red. "This area was rezoned 8 months ago," Naomi explained. "It sits inside a planned medical development corridor." Lynn leaned closer. "What kind of development?" "A pharmaceutical distribution and research complex. Several adjoining parcels have already been purchased through holding companies." She changed the display again. A valuation report appeared. Lynn stared at the estimated acquisition range. $4.8 million? "Possibly more if the remaining parcels are assembled," Naomi said. "Your father's property provides the most direct access between the proposed distribution center and the state highway. My father paid less than $100,000 for that house. In 1994, Naomi said, the land is worth considerably more than the structure." Lynn sat back. William loved that property. The pecan trees, the vegetable garden, the garage he refused to replace, even though one side leaned after heavy rain. He had never spoken about developers, rezoning, or millions of dollars. "Does he know?" she asked. "We can't determine that from public records," Naomi said. Kung studied the highlighted properties. "Who filed the development proposal?" Naomi brought up a corporate record. "Peachtree Medical Logistics." "Ownership?" "Layered through 3 holding companies. I'm still tracing it." "Any connection to Brooks Pharmaceutical?" "Nothing direct yet." Officer Carter exhaled. "We now have a family connection, a company vehicle, and a multi-million-dollar property." "But no proof that any member of the Brooks family ordered the attacks," Kung said. Carter nodded. "Not yet." Lynn looked at the photograph of Louise and her daughters again. "She thought I came for the land." "Someone did," Daniel said. "I didn't know what it was worth." "They may not believe that." The words angered her more than the accusation itself. "They never asked me." No one answered. "They followed my children, entered my house, and tried to force us off the highway because of something they imagined I wanted." Kung's voice remained quiet. "Fear rarely requires proof, only belief." Lynn turned toward him. "That sounds like experience." "It is." Before she could ask what kind, Officer Carter spoke through the monitor. "I'm requesting William's property records and any recent reports involving Louise, Denise, or Deborah. I also want to know who had access to the Brooks vehicle." "I'll handle the corporate side," Kung said. Carter looked at Lynn. "Do not call your father yet." Her expression hardened. "Why?" "If Louise is involved, warning William may warn her. That is my father, and he may be in danger." The answer stopped her. Carter's voice softened. "Give us a little time." "How much?" "Until tomorrow." Lynn did not like it, but she understood it. "Tomorrow," she agreed. The call ended. Naomi gathered her documents while Daniel returned to the security office. Within minutes, only Lynn and Kung remained. The silence felt heavier after the others left. Kung poured hot water into a cup and placed it beside her. "I drink coffee." "I know." She looked into the cup. Peppermint tea. "For the headache," he said. "I didn't say I had one." "You've been pressing your fingers against your temple for 10 minutes. Lynn wrapped both hands around the cup. "You really do notice everything." "Not everything. Enough to be irritating." "I've been told." The warmth seeped into her palms. Outside, Will and David were walking beside the lake with a security officer several paces behind them. Michaela ran ahead, waving a stick like a wand. Kung stood near the window with his hands in his pockets. "Why did you come to Atlanta?" Lynn looked at him. Officer Carter asked me the same question. I'm not asking as an investigator. That distinction changed her answer. She looked toward the children. My father is the oldest of 9. Kung waited. 5 months before we moved, one of his younger brothers died, then his younger sister. I'm sorry. Thank you. She watched Michaela chase David across the grass. Standing at the second funeral, I looked at my father and realized how old he had become. His heart disease, his kidneys, the COPD. Every year I stayed in Monterey was another year my children barely knew him. So you moved? Yes. For him? Lynn considered the question. For the children. Not for yourself? A humorless smile touched her mouth. My father and I have 20 years of disappointment between us. I didn't come here believing he would suddenly become the father I needed. Kung remained silent. But Will was named after him. My children deserved more than photographs and occasional phone calls. They deserved the chance to know their grandfather while he was still here. And the funerals made that feel urgent. They made it impossible to keep pretending time would wait. Her voice remained controlled, but the emotion beneath it tightened. I left a career I had built, friends, the ocean, a life that finally felt settled. I accepted less money and moved 3 children across the country. She looked at the valuation report. I did all of that so they could know him, not because of some land I didn't know was valuable. I believe you. The words came without hesitation. Lynn looked up. You don't have to say that. I don't say things because I have to. His gaze stayed on hers. You came for your children. Everything you have done since this began confirms that. For several seconds she could not speak. Most people praised her strength when what they meant was that they expected her to continue carrying everything without complaint. Kung's words felt different. He had not praised the burden. He had simply seen it. Thank you, she said. His expression softened. Outside, Michaela tripped. Lynn rose halfway from her chair. Before she could move, Will caught his sister's arm and steadied her. Michaela laughed, then kept running. Lynn sat again. They're going to love it here. They should. That worries me. Why? Because temporary places are easier to leave when they don't feel like home. Kung looked toward the children. I won't make promises I can't keep. I appreciate that. But no one will force you to leave before you're ready. Something quiet passed between them. Not a promise of permanence, a promise of choice. Naomi returned before either could respond. I traced Peachtree Medical Logistics. Kung turned. To whom? The holding company's registered agent works for a law firm retained by Brooks Pharmaceutical. Lynn's grip tightened around the teacup. Naomi placed another document on the table. There's more. William Smith's property records were accessed 6 times during the past month through a Brooks Pharmaceutical corporate account. Whose credentials? Kung asked. Executive Community Relations. Assigned to? Naomi met Lynn's eyes. Denise Brooks. The room went still. The company vehicle could have been borrowed. Credentials could have been shared. Property searches could have had legitimate explanations. But taken together, the shape of the truth was beginning to emerge. The caller had accused Lynn of returning for family money. Now Denise Brooks's credentials led directly to land worth nearly $5 million. For the first time, Lynn understood that the threat had never truly been about her return to Atlanta. It was about what someone believed her return might cost them. The first evening at the estate settled gently over the lake. For once, no police officers entered the guest house. No strange vehicle waited beyond the windows. No anonymous message appeared on Lynn's phone. The children noticed the quiet before she trusted it. David lay on the family room floor, assembling a model airplane he had discovered in the game cabinet. Will sat at the kitchen island pretending to read while watching his brother place the wings backward. Michaela had arranged Mr. Buttons and 3 borrowed stuffed animals around a toy tea set. Lynn unpacked a box of dishes they did not need. The guest house already had everything, but placing something of her own inside the cabinets made the space feel less borrowed. The doorbell rang. All 4 of them froze. The reaction lasted only a second. That was long enough. Lynn checked the security screen before opening the door. Kung stood outside carrying an insulated food container. Daniel waited beside him with 2 grocery bags. "I hope we're not intruding," Kung said. "You own the house." "That doesn't answer the question." Lynn stepped aside. "Come in." Michaela ran from the family room. "What's in there?" Kung looked down at the container. "Dinner." "What kind?" "Roasted chicken, rice, vegetables, and rolls." "Any macaroni?" Daniel lifted one of the bags. "Also macaroni." Michaela smiled. "You can stay." Lynn closed her eyes briefly. "Michaela." "What?" "He brought enough." Kung's left cheek dimple appeared. "I would be honored." Within minutes, the kitchen filled with voices and the smell of warm food. Daniel helped place everything on the counter before his radio sounded. "I need to check the north gate," he said. Will looked up. "What happened?" "Routine shift change." "How many guards are there at night?" "Enough." "That isn't a number." Daniel glanced at Lynn. She shook her head. "He's not going to stop asking." 12 guards rotate across the property, Daniel said. 4 remain inside the primary perimeter. "Armed?" "Will," Lynn warned. Daniel answered anyway. "Yes." "Do they all know we're here?" "They know a protected family is staying in the guest house. Only the primary team has your names." Will considered that. "Good." Daniel nodded toward him. "I thought so." He left through the front door. Will watched the security screen until Daniel disappeared from view. Kung took the chair across from him. "You can ask me anything you want to know about the property." "Anything?" "If the answer would not compromise security." Will looked toward his mother. Lynn gave a small nod. "Who watches the cameras at night?" he asked. Kung explained the security rotation while Lynn filled plates. He did not dismiss Will's concerns or tell him adults had everything handled. He answered until her son ran out of questions. That took nearly 10 minutes. David waited until everyone began eating before starting his own interrogation. "Do you make medicine?" "My company does." "Have you ever invented any?" "No." "Then what do you do?" "I make decisions." "Anybody can do that." "Not always good ones." David pointed his fork at him. "Do you make good ones?" "I try." "Mom makes good decisions." Will looked at him. "She drove across 3 lanes of traffic." "She saved us." "I know. I meant it was crazy." Lynn set down her glass. "Are we reviewing my driving at dinner?" "No," both boys answered. Michaela leaned toward Kung. "Do you have babies?" "No." "Why?" Lynn nearly choked on her water. "Michaela, that is personal." "He said we could ask anything." "I told Will he could ask about security." Kung looked at Michaela. "I spent most of my life working." "Mommy works." "She also made time for a family." Michaela considered him with the solemnity she brought to important matters. "You should get one." Michaela. "What? He has a big house." David covered his mouth to hide a laugh. Kung remained composed. "I'll take your recommendation under consideration." "That means no," Will said. "It means he's trying to escape the conversation," Lynn replied. For the first time, Kung laughed aloud. The sound was quiet and brief, but it changed his entire face. Lynn found herself smiling at him before she remembered everyone was watching. David noticed. He noticed everything he was not supposed to. Fortunately, he chose another role instead of commenting. After dinner, the boys cleared the table without being asked. Kung stood to help. Will shook his head. "Guests don't clean." "This is my house." "You're still our guest." David handed Kung a plate. "You can dry." Apparently that settled it. Lynn leaned against the counter and watched the 3 of them work. Kung did not act like a powerful man entertaining children. He listened to David's story about the failed volcano experiment. He allowed Will to correct the way he stacked the plates. When Michaela presented him with an empty toy cup, he pretended to drink. Nothing about his attention felt performative. He simply met each child where they were. The realization touched Lynn more deeply than she expected. Michaela fell asleep on the sofa before dessert. Mr. Buttons rested beneath her chin, one bent ear covering her mouth. Lynn reached down to lift her. "I've got her," Kung said. "You don't have to." "I know." He waited, not assuming permission. Lynn stepped aside. Kung slid one arm beneath Michaela's knees and the other behind her back. Her eyes opened briefly. "Where are we going?" "To your room." "Did we eat cake?" "Not yet." "Save me some." "I will." Her eyes closed again. Kung carried her upstairs slowly, careful not to disturb the rabbit tucked against her chest. When he returned, Lynn stood near the staircase. "You're good with children. They're honest. That's what you like about them? They don't pretend indifference when something matters." The answer landed closer to Lynn than she believed he intended. Or perhaps he had intended it precisely. Will and David went upstairs soon afterward, arguing over whether the model airplane would survive being launched from the second-floor balcony. "It will not," Lynn called after them. "We weren't going to do it," Will answered. David whispered too loudly. "We might have." Lynn shook her head. "They're getting comfortable. That was the purpose of bringing you here." "Still trying to convince me this isn't an inconvenience?" "No." Kung glanced toward the stairs. "I believe they have already proven it." She laughed. "Stay for tea." The invitation left her mouth before she had examined it. Kung looked at her. Lynn resisted the urge to explain. "I'd like that," he said. She carried 2 mugs onto the back porch. "Coffee," she said, keeping one. "Tea." Kung accepted the other. Their fingers touched around the warm ceramic. Neither pulled away immediately. Then Lynn released the cup and settled into one of the wooden chairs facing the lake. Kung sat beside her. The last daylight faded across the water. Security lamps illuminated the distant walking paths, but the porch remained soft with shadow. For several minutes they said nothing. The silence did not feel empty. Lynn wrapped both hands around her coffee. "I forgot what quiet sounded like." "You've had a difficult week." "A difficult 3 months." She looked toward the upstairs windows. "The children haven't been this relaxed since we moved." "And you? What about me?" "You are still listening for danger." She gave him a sideways look. "You've known me a week." "Am I wrong?" "No." The honesty surprised them both. Kung looked across the lake. "You don't have to survive tonight." Lynn released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "No," she said. "I don't." Another comfortable silence settled between them. After a while, she asked, "Were you always this quiet?" "No." She turned toward him. "I don't believe you." "I spoke much more when I was younger." "What happened?" "My father became ill. Responsibility arrived before I was prepared for it." "You inherited the company?" "I inherited several companies." There was something guarded beneath the answer. "Some were legitimate," he continued. "Some existed in forms I was unwilling to continue." Lynn watched him carefully. "So you changed them?" "I closed what could not be changed, rebuilt what could." "That must have created enemies." "It did." "Regrets?" "Yes." The direct answer impressed her. "But not about rebuilding the company," he added. "What made you choose pharmaceuticals?" "My mother." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "She was a physician. She believed medicine should reach people who could not afford influence. The company was the part of my family's legacy I believed deserved to survive." "So you made it legitimate for her." "For myself, too." Lynn smiled. "I like that answer." "And you? What about me?" "You could have chosen easier work." "I'm not convinced easy work exists." "Forensic psychology is an unusual choice." She looked into her coffee. "I wanted to understand what happens before violence. Not only what someone did, but how they reached the point where doing it became possible." "Did you find the answer?" "Many answers. None simple." She leaned back. "I worked in court clinics, locked hospital units, and correctional settings, competency evaluations, violence risk assessments, criminal responsibility cases. And after 8 years, you left. I wanted to intervene before the courtroom became inevitable." Kung nodded. "Your clients trust you." "They're learning to." "I watched you convince a man to enter treatment without humiliating him." "He made the decision." "You made it possible for him to see one." Lynn turned toward him. Compliments usually made her uncomfortable. That one felt less like praise than recognition. You listen differently from most people. How? You don't wait for your turn to speak. I found people reveal more when allowed to finish. That sounds strategic. It began that way. And now? Now I prefer knowing what people mean. The answer quieted her. She looked toward the dark water. My husband used to say I could hear the thing beneath what someone was saying. Kung remained still. How long has he been gone? 7 years. I'm sorry. Thank you. She traced one finger along the rim of her mug. Michaela was an infant. David was 3. Will was 6. You raised them alone. I had help occasionally, but yes. What happened? Car accident. Kung did not offer a rehearsed statement about fate or healing. He simply waited. Lynn appreciated him for that. I thought I would eventually meet someone, she continued. Then there was graduate school, work, the children. Every year had something urgent inside it. And your life became something that could wait. She looked at him. Yes. You understand that. Too well. Their eyes met in the porch's muted light. The attraction between them did not arrive suddenly. It had been gathering in pauses, remembered details, and moments when neither demanded more than the other could give. Lynn looked away first. Has anyone ever told you that you're intimidating? Yes. Often? Often enough. Do you know what changes their minds? Kung turned slightly toward her. What? They realize you're kind. For the first time that evening, his composure broke. Not dramatically. His gaze lowered to the tea in his hands, and something unguarded crossed his face. People don't usually describe me that way. Maybe they haven't been paying attention. He looked at her again. You have. I told you, I notice more than people think. So do I. The words settled between them. Upstairs, one of the boys laughed. Michaela called sleepily for her mother, then quieted again. Lynn started to rise. No second call came. She remained seated. Kung placed his mug on the small table between them. His hand rested near hers, close enough that the warmth of his skin reached her without contact. Neither moved closer. Neither moved away. They sat beneath the Georgia night, while frogs called from the lake and wind stirred through the trees. No declarations, no promises, only the quiet understanding that something had begun between them before either was ready to name it. For tonight, that was enough. William Smith opened the front door before Lynn reached the porch. For one suspended moment, neither of them spoke. He looked thinner than he had the last time she saw him. His gray sweatshirt hung loosely across shoulders that had once seemed broad enough to carry anything. A clear oxygen tube curved beneath his nose, and one hand remained wrapped around the doorframe, as if he needed its support, but did not want her to notice. His smile was the same. There's my girl. Lynn crossed the porch and hugged him, carefully at first, then tighter when his arms closed around her. You weren't supposed to come outside. I opened a door. You're breathing hard. I'm 72. Everything makes me breathe hard. She pulled back and studied his face. Have you been using your oxygen? It's on my face, isn't it? That doesn't mean you've been using it. William looked past her. Kung stood at the bottom of the steps. Daniel remained near the car, watching the street without appearing to. William's eyebrows rose. You brought company. Lynn turned. Daddy, this is Kung Min Young. Kung climbed the steps and extended his hand. Mr. Smith. William accepted it. You the man keeping my daughter and my grandchildren at that big house? Yes, sir. Good. Lynn blinked. That's it? William glanced at her. What else am I supposed to say? You don't know him. I know my grandchildren are safe. His gaze returned to Kung. And I know you came here with her instead of sending somebody else. Kung gave a slight nod. I thought it was important. So do I. William released his hand and stepped aside. Come in before Lynn decides the porch is medically dangerous. It is 40 degrees outside. It's 58. You have COPD. And you have always been bossy. I learned it from you. William smiled. That you did. The house smelled like coffee, furniture polish, and the menthol ointment William had used for as long as Lynn could remember. Family photographs covered one wall of the living room. William with his brothers and sisters. William and Louise on their wedding day. Lynn in her college graduation gown. Will as a baby in his grandfather's arms. David missing his front teeth. Michaela asleep against William's chest during one of his visits to California. Lynn stopped before that picture. It had been taken 5 years earlier. William looked stronger then. His hair had been darker, his face fuller. Michaela had been so small that one of his hands nearly covered her back. "You kept it," Lynn said. "Why wouldn't I?" She did not answer. There were too many honest answers. William had missed birthdays. He had forgotten calls he promised to make. He had allowed distance and disappointment to settle between them until Lynn stopped expecting him to close it. Yet her children's photographs filled his wall. Love had never been the problem. Love without action had been. Kung remained a few feet away, giving them privacy without leaving her alone. William lowered himself into his recliner. Lynn moved automatically to help him. "I can sit down." "I know." "Then let me." She withdrew her hand. William eased into the chair and adjusted his oxygen tubing. "Where are the children?" "At the estate with Naomi and 2 security officers." "Security officers?" "And Daniel," Kung added. William looked toward the front window. "That Daniel?" "Yes." "He looks serious." "He is." "Will likes him," Lynn said. "Will likes anyone who answers all his questions." "That boy always did need to know how everything worked." William smiled. "He used to take the batteries out of my remote just to see where the power came from." "He still does things like that." "And David?" "Eating everything in Kung's kitchen." William looked at Kung. "I hope you have money." Lynn laughed before she could stop herself. Kung's expression remained composed. "I've been warned." "And Michaela?" "Running the estate," Lynn said. "That sounds right." William leaned back, smiling, and for several minutes they spoke only of the children. Will had been asking Daniel about surveillance blind spots. David had declared the guest house refrigerator insufficient. Michaela had named 2 ducks at the lake and informed Kung that both belonged to her now. William laughed until the sound became a cough. The first cough led to another, then another. Lynn rose, but William lifted one hand. "I'm fine." "You're not." "I said I'm—" The coughing deepened. Lynn picked up the glass of water from the side table and placed it in his hand. Kung quietly moved the oxygen concentrator closer so the tubing would not pull. William drank. His breathing gradually steadied. Lynn sat on the edge of the sofa, watching him. "Have you seen your cardiologist?" "Last month." "Pulmonologist?" 2 weeks ago." "Nephrologist?" William gave her a tired look. "I have enough doctors." That wasn't an answer. I went. "And what did they say?" "That I am old and stubborn." "That sounds accurate." William smiled faintly. Then his gaze settled on her. "I'm glad you came home, Lynn." The words caught her off guard. She looked down at her hands. "I've been in Atlanta for 3 months." "I know. You could have said it before now." "I'm saying it now." "That doesn't erase everything before now." "No." William's voice quieted. "I know it doesn't." The room grew still. Lynn felt Kung's presence beside her, calm and unobtrusive. William rubbed one hand over his chest. "I should have been better." "Daddy." "Let me finish." She closed her mouth. "I should have called more." His eyes moved toward the photographs. "I should have come to California when your husband died." Lynn's throat tightened. "I should have helped you with those babies instead of telling myself you were strong enough to manage." "I did manage." "I know." His gaze returned to her. "But you shouldn't have had to manage everything alone." Lynn looked away. She had imagined hearing those words for years. In some versions, she yelled. In others, she cried. Now that the apology had finally come, she only felt tired. "I didn't move here to punish you," she said. "I know. I came because Uncle Raymond died, and then Aunt Patricia died 6 months later. They were both younger than you." William lowered his eyes. "I kept thinking about you being the oldest of 9. Her voice trembled, despite her effort to steady it. "I didn't want the next phone call to be about you." William reached across the space between them. Lynn hesitated, then placed her hand in his. "I wanted my children to know their grandfather while they still had time." His fingers tightened around hers. "I want that too." "Then you have to stop letting Louise decide when we see you." William's expression changed. The warmth disappeared first, then the guilt. "Louise worries about my health. She told me not to bring the children because you weren't strong enough for a visit. 2 hours later, Denise posted pictures of her family having dinner here." William looked toward the hallway. "I didn't know she told you not to come." "That is the problem." Lynn pulled her hand back. "You don't know what she says to me because you don't ask." William sat quietly. Kung did not move. Lynn took a breath. "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth." "All right." "Why is someone watching my children?" William's face went still. The reaction was small. Most people might have missed it. Lynn did not. "You know something. I know there's been tension. Tension does not run a mother and 3 children toward a concrete barrier." William's eyes widened. "What?" "Someone tried to force us off the highway." He stared at her. "They broke into our house. They photographed the children at school. They sent me pictures to prove they could reach us." "Lynn, the messages mention California, family money, and me taking something that belongs to them." William's breathing quickened. Kung stepped closer. "Mr. Smith, has anyone in this family discussed Lynn's inheritance?" William looked at him, then at Lynn. The silence answered before he did. "What inheritance?" Lynn asked. William reached toward the end table. His fingers shook as he opened the drawer and removed a thick envelope. He placed it on his lap. "I changed my will 6 weeks ago." Lynn stared at him. "Why?" "Because I wanted things settled." "What things?" "The house. The land. All of it." A chill moved through her. "Who gets it?" "You do." Lynn did not speak. William continued before she could. "The property goes to you. When you're gone, it passes equally to Will, David, and Michaela." She stood. "Daddy, I don't want your house." "I know. I didn't come here for your money." "I know that too." "Then why would you do this?" "Because you're my child. And Denise and Deborah are Louise's children. They are not mine. You helped raise them." "I did." William's voice hardened. "I paid for their schools. I helped Denise get her first job. I paid Deborah's rent every time she lost another one." He tapped the envelope. "This property belonged to me. It should go to my daughter and my grandchildren." Lynn paced toward the window. Beyond the glass, Daniel stood beside the car, his attention on a dark sedan passing slowly at the end of the street. "What is the land worth?" Kung asked. William hesitated. "Last appraisal said $4.8 million. Lynn turned. $4.8 million? The county rezoned this area for medical development. William looked uncomfortable. "There have been offers." "What kind of offers?" "Developers." "Which developers?" Kung asked. "One was called Peachtree Medical Logistics." Kung's gaze shifted to Lynn. The same name Naomi had found attached to the property searches. "When did the family learn about the will?" he asked. "The day I signed it." "Who was present?" "My attorney." "Louise." "Denise came by while he was here." "And Deborah?" Lynn asked. "Louise called her." William rubbed his forehead. "They were angry." "How angry?" "Denise said I was being unfair." "Deborah said you came back to Atlanta because you knew what the land was worth." Lynn stared at him. "And what did you say?" "I told them you didn't know anything about it." "Did they believe you?" "No." "Did Louise?" William's silence lasted too long. "Daddy." She said you were taking advantage of me because I was sick. Pain burned through Lynn's chest, not because she believed it, because Louise had placed the accusation in the room and William had allowed it to remain there. You knew they thought that about me. I told them they were wrong. When? Lynn, when did you tell them? The argument went too far. Deborah was shouting. I couldn't breathe. So you ended the conversation. I had to. And then you never warned me. William lowered his gaze. Lynn laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Someone threatened my children, and you decided silence was easier. I didn't know they would do this. You knew Deborah was unstable. I knew she had problems. She threatened to kill me and my children before I ever met her. I thought she was talking. Lynn stared at him. You thought wrong. The words struck hard. William flinched. Regret followed almost immediately, but Lynn did not take them back. Kung moved beside her. Not in front of her, not between her and her father. Beside her. His hand touched the center of her back, light enough that she could step away if she wished. She didn't. William watched the gesture. Then he looked at Kung. Can you keep them safe? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Can you find out who did this? Yes. What do you need from me? The name of your attorney, Kung said. Copies of every offer made for the property, the appraisal, and any correspondence involving Peachtree Medical Logistics. William nodded toward the envelope. It's all in there. Kung accepted it. Has anyone asked you to sign a new will? William's face tightened. Louise brought papers home last week. What kind of papers? Lynn asked. She said they would protect the property if I had to enter long-term care. Did you sign them? No. Relief loosened something in Lynn's chest. Where are they? In the desk. Do not touch them, Kung said. William looked at him. I wasn't planning to. Do not sign anything Louise, Denise, or Deborah gives you. Do not meet with their attorney. If anyone pressures you, call me. Kung removed a card from his coat and placed it on the table. William picked it up. You give orders like you expect people to follow them. I prefer that they do. A small smile touched William's mouth. I can see why my daughter likes you. Lynn turned sharply. Daddy? What? We are discussing attempted murder. And I'm old, not blind. Kung remained perfectly still. Only the slight tightening at the corner of his mouth betrayed him. This is not the time, Lynn said. William leaned back in his chair. At my age, every time is the time. Despite herself, Lynn smiled. It faded quickly. Where is Louise now? At church. On a Thursday afternoon? Committee meeting. Lynn looked toward Kung. He understood the question she did not ask. Daniel confirmed the location before we arrived, he said. William frowned. You had my wife followed? I confirmed that Lynn could visit you safely. That means yes. Yes. William considered this. Fair enough. Kung carried the envelope to the car, while Lynn remained on the porch with her father. The late afternoon air smelled of rain. William stood just inside the doorway, one hand gripping the frame. You should go back inside, Lynn said. You should stop telling me what to do. Neither of those things is going to happen. He smiled. Then the smile disappeared. I'm sorry. For what? All of it. Lynn looked toward the road. That's a large apology. I know. I can't fix 20 years in one afternoon. I'm not asking you to. William's voice softened. But if you give me the chance, I'd like to do better with whatever time I have left. Her eyes stung. She stepped forward and adjusted the oxygen tubing where it had twisted against his cheek. I'll bring the children when Kung says it's safe. Not when you say? I already know what I'll say. That I'm medically fragile. That you're stubborn. That too. William covered her hand with his. Bring them soon. I will. She kissed his cheek. When she turned, Kung waited beside the passenger door. Daniel sat behind the wheel. Kung did not rush her. He simply waited until she was ready. Lynn walked down the steps and entered the car. They had traveled several blocks before Kung spoke. "You were right." Lynn looked at him. "About what?" "You did not come to Atlanta for the land." "I told you that." "Yes. But now I understand why it matters that someone believed you did." She looked out the window. Neighborhood houses moved past in the fading light. "I spent years wishing my father would choose me." Kung remained quiet. "Not over a wife," she continued. "Not over her children. Just once, I wanted him to decide that disappointing me was not the easiest option. And now he has. He put my name in a will. That is not what I meant." Lynn turned toward him. Kung's expression was calm, but his eyes held hers. "He told you the truth," he said. "He gave us what we need, and he asked for another chance. That doesn't undo anything." "No. It only gives him an opportunity to do better next time." She studied him. "You make forgiveness sound practical. I think trust is practical." Kung glanced toward the envelope between them. "It should be based on what a person does next." Lynn looked down at her hands. "And if there is no next time, then you will know you offered one." The answer settled quietly inside her. She leaned back against the seat. After a moment, Kung placed his hand on the console between them. He did not reach for her. He did not assume. Lynn turned her hand over and slid her fingers into his. His hand closed gently around hers. Daniel's phone rang from the front seat. He answered through the car's audio system. "Naomi." "I reviewed the first documents Mr. Smith provided," Naomi said. "Peachtree Medical Logistics is a shell company, but the legal filings lead back to Brooks Pharmaceutical Holdings." Lynn's fingers tightened around Kung's. Naomi continued. "There's something else. Dennis Brooks contacted Kung's office 15 minutes ago." "What does he want?" Kung asked. "He says one of his company vehicles was used without authorization." "The SUV?" Lynn asked. "Yes." Naomi paused. "He wants a private meeting tonight." Kung's expression changed. The warmth vanished, leaving behind the controlled authority Lynn had seen only in glimpses. "Arrange it." "At the estate?" "No." His voice remained quiet. "Neutral ground." Daniel glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "You think it's a trap?" Kung looked down at the envelope bearing William Smith's name. "I think Dennis Brooks has realized someone in his family is using his company to commit crimes." Lynn held Kung's gaze. "And if he already knew?" "Then tonight," Kung said, "he will learn that we know too." Outside, the first rain began to fall. Small drops struck the windshield and disappeared beneath the wipers. Lynn looked back toward her father's neighborhood until it vanished behind them. The inheritance had never meant anything to her, but to someone else it was worth nearly $5 million. Worth watching her children, breaking into her home, running her car toward a concrete wall. She tightened her hold on Kung's hand. The danger finally had a motive. Now they needed a name, and Dennis Brooks might be the man who gave it to them.